Coming up today on the Prosperity Nation podcast.
When you do get rid of that barrier, things will run a lot smoother. And if they don't, then you probably still got the wrong thing.
That's right. If the solution you applied doesn't work,
there's probably another rock somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. If the problem is persisting, then what you tried to do was the wrong thing. Well, hello. Welcome to the Prosperity Nation podcast. I'm Angie.
And I'm Elise.
And we are so excited to tell you what's new in Elise's life today.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
Come on. Nothing is new. That's why I thought it would be a great topic to bring up for you.
I know. Well, you know what it really is? Like, when I'm put on the spot, I get nervous and everything just goes blank, you know? And so then I just can't think of anything.
I get it. You probably had the biggest party this weekend. You're out at the beach, studying for your exam, walking your dog, getting your, who knows, going to the drag races or something. So you're like, I don't know. I didn't do anything.
That's kind of how it was. And then it's like, when you work in a more upper management level for so long, you get used to like not talking about your personal life with people that work for you. So, they come up to me. It's just such a habit of like, oh, nothing, things were fine. Even if I had like the craziest weekend, it's like a habit now. Like I never do anything ever. And I probably sound like the most boring person.
Well, I'll vouch for you that you're not a boring person, even though you think you don't do anything in life and you sit around. I don't think you're boring.
Oh, thank you.
And our listeners don't think you're boring either. So
that's good. I don't know why they would listen if I was boring, but
yeah,
whatever.
True.
I don't know.
Well, I tell you, I've been making some pretty big decisions lately, and not always the fun ones. We helped move my mom she's been over a month now, get her all settled in a new place, and she's loving it. She's doing well, just trying to make her life easier, without all the maintenance of this country property she had. And we did a ton of work getting the property ready to go, so it'd be ready for market and all of that. And I've never had this experience where you put it on the market and you don't get one call, not one. A week, 2 weeks, we dropped the price 10%. 1 week, 2 weeks, dropped it again. And I'm like, holy smokes, this thing's going to drop so low. I'm going to have to go buy it myself. No, it's really not good, actually. And it's, trying to figure out what happened. But I guess the bottom line is that just because we thought it was worth $100,000 more than it was, doesn't mean it was. But
That's
boy,
true.
Is it easy to spend that money. It's like,
you probably already spent it.
I already spent it 3 times over. And it's not even my money. It's my mom's money. Just kidding. Yeah, but it's just those expectations, It's like you think it's worth something when you go to list it, and you could be way off. That's how real estate works, And just because you think it's worth, $500,000 or $1 million doesn't mean it is.
No, others might not agree.
It's only going to be worth what somebody
thinks it's worth
for, right?
Yeah.
So
that sucks.
Yeah, that's tough though. I'd rather I just hate having to do price cuts and things like that. And it's not been on the market that long, but we're just solving all the problems, just like debugging any income line.
Right.
What's the situation? What's the ideal scene? What are we trying to get to? What's getting us from point A to B, and why aren't we getting there? And then start, figuring it out. Is it the wrong, not ready for the market? Or are we not getting offers in? But, the bottom line is we're not even getting calls. So we know we're way out of the ballpark. And that sucks to deal with, Yeah,
that's not fun.
Yeah. But, it is a good point for our topic today, actually. We wanted to talk a lot today about, I'm going to switch the topics on you, Elise, okay?
Okay. I love a good switcheroo here. Right. Keep me on my toes.
we were going to talk about tax planning, but we're on a good line to talk about wrong targeting. So,
okay.
I'm like, let's just go for it here.
Let's do it.
Wrong targeting. So what is wrong targeting? What does wrong targeting mean?
So it's like when there's one problem, but you're blaming it on something totally unrelated.
Yeah.
Essentially, you're taking it out on blaming something that has nothing to do with the actual issue. Yeah,
exactly. Or another way of utilizing that in business or in money is that you're solving the wrong problem. Mm-hmm. You've got this problem over here, and so I call it wrong targeting when you're over here trying to solve the wrong problem with the wrong thing, because you can't really confront the real problem over here.
Or you don't know the real problem.
Right. Why wouldn't you know the real problem?
Because you don't know what the goal is. Like, you don't know what you're trying to accomplish.
Exactly. You know, we see it in so many different ways. We see it show up in both ways, where we're actually, taking it out on the wrong thing. We also see it where people are handling the wrong problem with the wrong solution. And we can sit back and we see this happening. And I think that's the more understanding you have about how money works and how things flow, you can actually see this happening. But man, it's really hard to get other people to see it sometimes, Like there's that situation I know we recently had where there was, there's one person who just kept wanting to cut back on costs. Yes. And people think, I got a budget, I got to cut back. And I'm like, this budget doesn't even work. First off, budgeting doesn't work because there's two parts to cash flow, right? There's income and expenses. So if you just focus on expenses, to me, that's wrong targeting if you're not making enough money.
Well, yeah, because then you keep cutting. And so what I think people don't realize is like, the more they cut, the less income now they need to make to sustain the expenses. So they're actually like contracting because now they don't need to create as much.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that because they're just focusing on cutting, but now their income demand keeps decreasing. And next thing you know, they're down, half of what they were doing. Yeah. And their expenses are low, but they're just not making as much money now.
Yeah. And you know what? Because I've pulled this string many times with people and on myself too, but the bottom line is that there's an unwillingness or an inability to actually confront the fact that you have a responsibility to make more money. Like, I don't know why that's so hard to face, where it seems easier, well, I just need to cut costs, rather than saying, I just need to take responsibility for being able to make more money. People don't talk like that.
Because it's easier to cut than it is to like get out there and hustle.
Well, what makes it so hard for people to realize that if you want to live the life that you're living with the expenses you currently have, that in order to decrease your financial stress, that means you have to go earn more money, not decrease these expenses? Why is that hard to face?
Well, I think it's because it's now like forcing you to like put your big boy pants on and actually like, you know what I mean though? Like you have to man up and like go and do the work. And I think it's a lot easier to just sit back and be like, cancel my Netflix, cancel my whatever, than to actually be like, you know what, I'm going to cold call 30 people today until I get a sale. Like it's a lot easier to confront that than having to pick up the phone and actually do the work to get more income.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's really hard to figure out why you're not making more money. Mm-hmm. Like it's a lot easier to just look at, I'm going to stop doing this, this, and this. Yeah. That's not the right solution because like you said, you're shrinking your lifestyle, but the goal of prosperity is living a flourishing life. That means you as a person and you financially, and you can't do that by cutting back. You have to do that by expanding.
I have to say there's a difference between cutting waste and just cutting expenses. Because obviously, like, we want to cut waste. If it's not producing and doing anything for you, by all means, cut it. But what you're talking about is just cutting just to save a few pennies here and there, even though you might actually need it.
Right, or cutting the wrong things. I think that's another thing that we see a lot of. Like, we laugh because it's so hard for people to let go of their people that aren't working for them working well. Like, you don't want to fire somebody, or we see this in, people don't want to let go of their bookkeepers or their tax person, even though the stuff is a mess and they've lost hundreds of thousands on their tax. Oh, I like my guy, or whatever. But, a bad apple in your company or in your financial team, it will cost you at least 12 times what you're paying them. The problem isn't take out the controls and allow that person to continue on, tighten up the controls in that case, and then focus on making sure people are trained, but also handling that person that caused that to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
The point is that if you are in a cash flow crunch, focus on increasing your income and don't focus on just cutting down your expenses. That's almost the poverty mentality that you started out to say, like, the more you shrink, the more you shrink. But the more you expand, the more you expand. And the expansion says, come up with the ideal scene and get on that track toward the ideal scene. So we have to confront the income.
And then you can cut along the way, like what doesn't contribute to the ideal scene. Because like cutting expenses, like I've said, before, it isn't actually a problem if it's waste. But you need to know where you're going and what you need to get there. And that's what's important.
And I think that's part of the problem is that people really aren't taught. They don't know how to identify what the situation really is. Like what really is the problem that needs to be solved? How do we find what the real problem to focus on is? What do you think? Where do you start?
Well, obviously, I don't know. If you don't know where you want to go, you're not going to know if there's a problem or not. So I would start there. What do you want? What income do you want to be at? Where do you want to go with your business? And if they're I want to be millionaires and they're only making $50K a year, you're like, okay, well, cutting expenses isn't going to make you a millionaire. You have to step on the gas.
Right.
So I think you can't really figure out what the situation is or what to even solve if you don't know what the goal is.
Yeah, true.
Or where you're going.
True. And we talk about that a lot where, getting very, 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 very clear on the destination of what you're creating is what's going to be the impulse that will keep you pulling along. And then your job is just to remove the obstacles and the barriers and anything that's resisting you. If you just keep removing it, that'll flow and it'll flow fast, And if overspending is one of those obstacles, yeah, of course it has to be handled. But if you can't also see that you've got to figure out a way to create more money. If your business is not cash flow positive, then you've got to figure out, assess your product. What are your product? Do people want it? Is it something that they crave? Are you charging enough for it? Are you selling enough? Is your pipeline big enough? Those are all produce more income kind of solutions rather than cut back $20 on that subscription or don't hire the people that you need to actually do it. Wrong. It's just the wrong solution to the wrong problem.
Yeah. Yeah, we see it honestly all the time, I think.
Yeah.
And it's hard to. It's like you need the roadmap to know where you're going, and you don't really know which road to take until you know exactly where you're going.
Yeah, and I know one of the hardest things to confront is why isn't the income coming in? And that is a harder question to look into and to observe. And sometimes we have to look at our sales process or our pipeline process, or maybe they've gotten through the pipeline, they've gotten through the sales, but we're not delivering well enough. We're not giving exchange and abundance where people are sending us lots of referrals and stuff. We got to be honest about all those steps. This may not be in your business. This is at home too. Where your couples, maybe they're not getting along, it's a husband-wife business or something. And, when you're not getting along, you start pulling out these wrong targets, right? So, you could have this company that you're working together and you're making, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on, but then you got one person saying, where'd you spend that $5 on? I want the receipt. I want the receipt for that $5. And it's yeah, it's good to have good bookkeeping, but it's the wrong target. What about that $50,000 thing that was purchased? Is that really necessary? And it's just being able to, I guess my whole point of this whole show this time is being able to align the solution with the right problem. And you've got to know how to identify what the real problem is. And it takes being really honest with yourself, honestly. It doesn't feel good going through that kind of analysis, but it's how you come up with a real solution that can work.
Yeah, that's true. I think even with some clients that we've had, and throughout time, it's I've actually on this recording while we've been doing this, noticed a lot of times, a lot of the clients start to get really nitpicky about all the expenses and exactly what is in the $500 supplies category and this and that when their income is going down. It's almost like they get fixated on the expenses to that level of degree of like you said, the $5. What is that $5 for? I need to know exactly why there was that, instead of looking at the income and saying, well, why is my income going down? They're well, what did I spend $10 on?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And also being able to get those people that are pains in butts off your lines fast. How much time does it take you to fight that $5,000 invoice that you didn't want to pay or wasn't properly serviced, or maybe somebody's making you hire a lawyer for something? How much energy and time to fight that thing versus to just turn your eyes the other direction and go make $20,000 over there. Not realizing that having that wrong attention on that thing is costing you way more than that thing you've got your attention on.
Yeah, I think that's true for staffing too. Even like you were saying in the beginning, like kind of like those bad apples, even if they're not costing you money in terms of waste or whatever, if you have that bad seed, they're can be cancerous. And even though it might seem like more work without them, it actually tends to open up things. And things run a lot smoother when you don't have that person in the organization, because it's like, whether it's conscious or not, they're bringing everyone down.
It's true.
So it's, I definitely think that's something to think about too when you're looking at getting rid of or waste or economizing of any kind.
Yeah, it's like being really honest about what is the real problem? Because things like a river flows. It knows it needs to get to the ocean. It just knows it does. And as long as you have a river bank and there's sides on the walls of the river and it won't just flood everywhere. So you got to have boundaries and then remove the obstacles. Make sure there's no dams and boulders and trees, and the river will flow. So it's not about trying to push the water to the ocean, right?
Could you imagine?
Right. It's like, just get rid of that rock, get rid of that tree, get the barriers off the flow. That's all it's about, and it will flow on its own. And so just finding those bad apples or finding those, those areas that are really the right things to remove that are your obstacles, and be honest and look honestly and have that ability to observe what you really see without putting a bunch of stories and reasons and excuses, but just what do you actually see is happening?
Right. Well,
and start confronting that.
Yeah, I think that's a good example. In the river, once you remove that rock or tree, it will flow. And I think that's what, is really important to realize. Like, when you do get rid of that barrier or justification obstacle, things will run a lot smoother. And if they don't, then you probably still got the wrong thing.
Yeah. That's right. If the solution you applied doesn't work,
there's probably another rock somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't work. That's pretty obvious. Like, if you're cutting back and you're still not now profitable, then maybe cutting back wasn't the right answer. You solved the wrong problem.
Right.
If the problem is persisting, then what you tried to do was the wrong thing.
Exactly.
I hate having to confront that. I'm having to confront that stuff all the time. Having to sit down and be honest about, wow, I was trying to get this part of the business to expand and it didn't expand. Then I have to look at myself and say, okay, well, am I wearing my correct hat? I got to wear a hat of an executive, but sometimes I got to wear the hat of a salesperson or a marketing person or a HR person or like a CPA, for example. But, just recognizing, what is the hat you're supposed to be wearing at this point in time. Use your observations and really look and find out, am I headed toward my ideal scene? And if I'm not, what do I need to remove? What do I need to handle? And what is the correct problem I'm trying to resolve? Well, look, we love to hear your story. Maybe we got this all wrong. Like, tell us how it works for you. But what we know is that, money flows. It's like electricity or like a river. And so if you can find those barriers and get those barriers off the line, it's going to flow. And if you can do that well, you're going to speed things up really quick. So we want to hear what do you do?
Exactly. As always, share your stories, questions, comments, concerns with us at stories@prosperitynation.com.
Yeah, don't share your concerns. We don't want to hear them. No, I'm just kidding. We want to hear from you. Whatever it is, we're open to hearing it.
Just share whatever you want.
Yeah.
You can also like and subscribe to our podcast and follow us on our social media.
Awesome. See you next time.
See ya.
Thanks for joining us today. Follow us on social media for the latest episodes, updates, and more. Like and subscribe to videos from us on YouTube, and find out more at prosperitynation.com. That's it for now. We'll see you next time on the Prosperity Nation podcast.